Hey friends, this is The Messy Life with Abhinav, and today we are going to talk about what is one of the hottest topics going on in the world right now, which is generative AI and whether using it is ethical, it is non ethical, what generative AI actually is, and what are the consequences to it. What are the use cases, what are the pitfalls, and just what it is going to do to our lives. And this is something that is being hotly debated everywhere, east to west, north to south. Everybody's talking about it. There are endless AI trends going on social media. And, it is just something that people are getting caught up into, whether they like it or not. And, there is a lot of, what shall we say, there's a lot of misinformation about generative AI, and a lot of people either they don't care what it is, what it does, what it actually is, and either they don't care or they know but they do it anyway just because it is cool, it is hip. So here's my statement first of all on generative AI. I do not hate generative AI. I am fine with generative AI as long as the people that it is being, the works that it is being trained on, those works, the data sets, those data sets are acquired ethically. I have no problem at all with generative AI. Companies, they can use it on their own material as long as the appropriate what shall we say, the acceptances have been done for it. You know, I'm just forgetting the name right now for the I'm forgetting the word that but the permissions have been taken internally for all of that. And as long as that is done, I'm totally fine with it. That is an ethical use of generative AI. But what is unethical is something like what Facebook, or rather its parent company Meta, has done recently over the last few months, possibly over the entire last year. The generative AI tool that they have been building, they have actually, by their own admission, they have pirated tens of thousands of novels, books, audios, everything. I personally know a lot of authors who have written for the Black Library, which is, part of Games Workshop and its Warhammer World. Authors who have written for Star Trek, for Star Wars, and so many other big IPs. Even a lot of, authors who have done their own original work. There's an endless amount of those people, like, Martha Wells and the Murderwood Diaries, or, you go on the internet, right now, you can find like 100 authors within a few seconds, who have complained about this and who are trying to get something done. But and then there's all these visual artists, like actually the people who draw illustrations, whether it's for comics, whether it's for video games, or whether it's from some other kind of entertainment, movies, TV shows, whatever, just general fan art even. They have had their works stolen by generative AI companies, and there is no compensation. Millions, tens of millions of just illustrations, images, and thousands of TV shows, movies. They've all been taken by these generative AI companies. They have been taken without any permission from the people who hold the copyrights, the people who created those things. Their work has been taken, fed into this robot machine, and just used to spit out all kinds of nonsense all day. And there are so few people at the top who care about all of this. This is an unethical use of generative AI. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's talk about what is generative AI. What is AI? AI is artificial intelligence. If you talk about popular culture, what is AI? AI is something like the character Data from Star Trek. AI is something like the droids from Star Wars. You know, those are, the fundamental building blocks of what we in the cultural zeitgeist understand AI to be. AI is HAL 3000, I believe it is, from 2001 A Space Odyssey. The villain of the whole book, the villain of that series, that is an AI. It is a computer intelligence that can think for itself. It is self aware. Skynet is an AI from Terminator. It can understand what it is doing. It can learn itself. It doesn't need, you know, external stimuli to be fed to it. It just takes it in. It has its own awareness of what it is doing, and it can, it can feel, it can, come to its own conclusions. Ultron is an AI. And yes, generally in a lot of popular culture, AI is seen as, it is portrayed as an evil thing, because a lot of times artificial intelligence is used as a warning in the story. But you can also have the good examples, like there are literally thousands of droids in Star Wars who are amazing, right? There's C3PO, there's R2D2, there's Chopper. There are just so many of those, right? We played with some of those characters, we've seen them on television, we've seen them in movies, we've read them all in comics. There's just so many examples. And then of course, there's Data within Star Trek. There's his brother Lore. There's the child that Data tried to create, Lal. And there's B4, this unfinished robot that Dr. Soong tried to create. You want more, you have the Isaac Asimov novels. You have the R. Daniel Oliver. He is an artificial intelligence. He's a robot that is self-aware, that can think for itself, and it's undistinguishable from us. The only thing is, those things, they are robots, they are machines, they're mechanical machines. We are, machines of flesh and blood, muscles, and, blood, and all of that stuff. So that is what AI is. I've used, popular culture examples to explain to you what that is. Now, what is generative AI? Generative AI is basically what is called, a large learning model. It can vary. There are so many distinct variations of it, and there are some excellent use cases for LLMs. They're used by NASA. They're used by so many, just huge companies all over the world for, chatbots to, in their opinion, make more efficient use of customer service. NASA uses them in so many different things. LLMs have helped us learn so much about the universe, process intense amounts of data that us humans, whether it's like 10 of us or 100 of us, we just could not compute. We just could not process all of that. Those are good cases of generative AI not generative AI, large learning models, and what they can be used for, what they should be used for. There's a saying, there are so many variations on it, but ultimately it all comes down to, like this basic concept. We need AI in our lives to do all the mundane stuff for us, so we can help ourselves become more aware. We can lead more fulfilling and more enriching lives to better ourselves. Star Trek, what is the point of Star Trek? You watch The Next Generation, you watch the original series, you watch DS9, you watch Voyager, you watch Discovery, you watch even Lower Decks, and so much of all that stuff, those books, those comics. A lot of the time, what the idea is that humans have given up the pursuit of material wealth in that era, in the 23rd century, the 24th century, and they work to better themselves. Well, yeah, I mean, there are certain limitations on it. It seems like an, unobtainable goal, essentially. But that is the idea. You go for that, You have the tools, you have the opportunities to do that. That is why the hopeful nature of Star Trek speaks to a lot of people. That is why TNG, Next Generation, it is one of the best Star Trek shows ever. No matter how much you appreciate DS9 for its more realistic look, or you like Discovery for its more modern sensibilities, or Lower Decks for all the goofiness and everything. Despite all of that, this is the lesson that is hammered home again and again. AI should help us to do the stuff that we don't want to do, the mundane stuff, like I don't know, turning on the sprinklers in the morning. Doing like insane calculations or whatever. And we have like supercomputers for that. Large learning models are an extension of that. They are an evolution of that. And, just do all the mundane stuff. Like, someone has to maintain the weather grid. say, like monitor all the satellites, process the incoming data, spit out all the, calculations, all the reports, distribute it, worldwide, whatever. This is just like off the cuff what I'm thinking about. I'm sure that other people can come up with better examples, more relevant examples, or whatever. But that is the thing. AI should help us to, do all of that stuff so we can pursue some creative endeavors. We can focus on, I don't know, we can focus on like my hobbies, which are, Warhammer, video games. And let me focus on that. You know, let me focus on my work and let me focus on my hobbies. Let Give me the time, give me more opportunities so I can develop myself as a person. Some other people, they want AI to help them do all the mundane stuff so they can write that novel or that series that they've been wanting to write for like a decade, that maybe that comic series, write that movie script, write the television script, write poetry, literally anything else, something that gives us joy, something that gives us this belief that, we are doing something for ourselves and we are making life better for ourselves. Because that is the point of having a hobby or an activity that, that gives you that self enrichment, right? Now, what happens when all of that is abused? When a large learning model is used to bypass copyright restrictions, it is used to bypass essentially the uh, you know the, the ownership of a product, and that product can be anything. It can be a fan art, it can be a movie, it can be a book, it can be a comic, it can be a video game, it can be anything really. What happens when something like that occurs? Well, the first thing that the people in power do is they start firing off people. And we have seen this time and again in the last 3 years, as just because of more and more consolidation within several industries like video games. Studios are being closed down, positions are being closed down, and more people are becoming unemployed. That was already happening. Generative AI has made that worse. What does generative AI do? It is essentially a large learning model that processes millions of instances of data. It can just be text, it can be images, it can be anything. It processes all of that, creates an internal database, and then you, as the end user, you just go in, you say, oh, give me a cross between Warhammer and Star Trek and make it very action, add some sparks, add some explosions, add some hot chicks, add some badass aliens, add this music from Slayer, add this thing, add that thing, and blah, 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 blah. And it just spits it out. It doesn't create anything. This is the fundamental nature of what people misbelieve generative AI is. It is not actually creating anything new. It has, let's take an example, right? It has a data set of 5 items. You give it, what those 5 items are. So you tell it, oh, give me a mix called, equation 1234-A56. Give me that. It will do that. It will take those 5 data sets that it has, mix them in the equation that you give it, and then just spit it out. That's not new. It's not new. It is something that it has trained itself on, and it's just spitting it out back at you. That is what generative AI is doing. You're not smart for coming up with that prompt. The people who made that generative AI LLM, that whole model, that whole software, they're not smart for doing that. They are just giving you the tool to bypass creativity. You have to understand that. It is making you lazy, it is making you less creative, and it is making you work harder while the world burns around you. I have known, like in the last few months, I've seen instances of so many people that I respect, people that I follow. They essentially, we're going to use this word, content. It comes up a lot in these discussions, and some people hate the word, some people like the word or whatever. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. We have to, there has to be a base level discussion of these things. And that is where, the word content comes in. Because to an generative AI model, anything that you write, anything that you create is nothing but simply data. It is simply ones and zeros that it is going to gobble up and shit out the back. And some self-taught genius or self-absorbed genius halfway across the world is going to be like, "Oh, I made this. I am so smart." Blah blah blah. Yeah, no, that is not the case. First of all, okay. So what have we established? Generative AI steals from artists. It doesn't create anything new, and it makes you lazy. But what more than that? There has to be something more, right? Like people wouldn't be as fired up as they were if it was just that, which by itself is a huge red flag. Excuse me. It's a huge red flag. It's a gross violation of artistic integrity. Essentially, that is what it is. The problem is that these large learning models, especially these generative AI models, the data sets that they're created on, those data sets require immense amounts of storage. But more than that, the ability to process all of that data, to take all that incoming input from people who just go on the ChatGPT website, who type a bunch of commands, and they're like, okay, I want that. All of that processing power, it is done in these huge data centers all over the world, especially in the US, in North America, especially in Europe. Those data centers, they consume a lot of processing power. That processing power requires a lot of energy. That energy gives off a ton of heat, and those systems need to be cooled. And those systems, they're not cooled by massive, air conditioning systems, which, to an extent, they will have some of that, but they also require a lot of water, basic water that we have. And what happens is the water that is used to cool these data centers, that water becomes essentially unusable for anything else. It is tainted water, it is corrupted water, and it is useless for anything else after that. So what are we doing? We're giving off more heat into the world. We already have issues with climate change. Rising temperatures are a huge problem. Lower water levels across the globe, sea levels, those are a problem. The ice caps are melting. The icebergs are melting. That is happening. There was a brief stop to it for a while around the turn of the century and the early years of the 21st century. Excuse me. There was a time when it all slowed down, because we were passing regulations all over the world. People were coming together, governments were coming together to address this issue. But now, with the rise of these data centers, these generative AI models, systems, OpenAI, ChatGPT, Stable Diffusion, and there's so much more, all that nonsense. Like China has like 3 different systems of its own going on that are competing with ChatGPT and Stable Diffusion. All that, what we're doing is we are just killing the planet. That's what we're doing. The planet is already dying. We have destroyed tens of thousands of species in the world already in like the last 150 years. And we continue to accelerate that destruction with the use of these data centers and these generative AI learning systems, and there's no end to it. Now, those are some of the biggest things that we've talked about, but there's one more thing that I believe we should all be very cognizant of. Because like I said, studios are closing down, people are being fired, and what ultimately is happening all over, Well, if people are being fired, they don't have money, there's no income, they cannot get a new job elsewhere because that place is already employing some kind of a generative AI system, right? Artists who get paid maybe like say $100 an illustration, they are told that okay, fine, We don't need you anymore because we're using generative AI. Nothing new is being created, already a huge problem. And the issue is people are becoming poorer. The wealth is once again, in another way, flowing from the bottom to the top. The bottom is already squeezed pretty hard, and the top is just like, swimming in wealth. And the upward stream, it just continues. There's no stop to it. 2 years ago, Hollywood had a huge strike. It was related to, just there were so many issues going on within Hollywood, within the television business in America. And, part of the reasons that these people, these actors and these crews and everyone, they were all striking was because of AI. Because AI was taking jobs away from them, and they wanted their unions to help them, to defend them, and to put in some protections so that, studios and other rich companies, they wouldn't just take away all that work away from them. And there were some, concessions made and everything, some agreements were reached, but we are back to it now because it's worse than ever. AI companies like OpenAI, they are worth like hundreds of billions of dollars. They are burning billions of dollars a year, but they keep getting funding because they've convinced the world of this grift that generative AI is good. Generative AI, it democratizes art. It doesn't. Just because OpenAI or other generative AI company with its models, just because it stole some unique looking art style, or it stole 10,000 artists worth of artwork, and it gives you the access to just type a prompt and get an image, that doesn't democratize artwork for you. And the reason I'm talking about that is because of all these generative AI social media trends that have been popping up. Two of the most destructive and two of the most idiotic trends just in the last 1 month, month and a half, are the Studio Ghibli trend and the action figure trend. The Studio Ghibli trend, what it is, Hayao Miyazaki in Japan, he is one of the world's most renowned storytellers, one of the most renowned animators in the world for like the last, 40 years, 50 years, whatever. He has created, something unique in Japan. And Studio Ghibli has made animated movies, and they have created something so visually unique that, and the stories are in those movies, they're just compelling, they're amazing. And a lot of that is because, the style of art that they have chosen to work with. OpenAI stole that, and it gave you the ability to turn your images and your videos into Studio Ghibli art styles. When Hayao Miyazaki, the main person at Studio Ghibli, when he was first shown an example of generative AI a few years ago, he said, "This is a crime against humanity, against life itself." He was repulsed, and I'm sure that if he could have, he would have just slapped those people sitting across from him who introduced generative AI to him. I fully believe that. But he's a man of principles. He's a man who who believes in admonishing with his words rather than anything else. That's what he said. It's a crime against life itself. His words could not have been truer. Generative AI is literally killing the planet. It's making people even more destitute. It is making the top 0.001% of people in the world, like Elon Musk, like Jeff Bezos, Sam Altman, Mark Zuckerberg, all those people, it is making them even more money. While the rest of the people, who are trying to get by, they can't. The action figure trend. The action figure trend was basically you feed, from what I've seen on the internet. I did not, just disclaimer, I did not go explore this thing myself. I just saw all the nonsense posted on Bluesky, which was the action figure feed on Bluesky. It's been pretty much unusable for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks now. You basically feed a photo of yourself to the system, you add some prompts, and the system just gives you an image that is like, action figure packaging. And I'm not going to post that here, of course, but what I want to tell you is it is the most stupid ass shit I've ever seen. What is, an action figure packaging? Just give me a second, I'll show it to you guys. All right, so we're back after the jump. So I just had a couple of action figure, empty packaging with me here in the room. So I just grabbed those. So here's one. This is for G.I. Joe Classified Storm Shadow from Hasbro. Yeah. So that's the packaging. You see the front. Simple. The figure is here. And then you turn, you see there's a bunch of artwork there. Here at the back, This is action figure packaging. Of course, this is extremely modern packaging. And the trend, this is, the Masters of the Universe New Eternia Beastman packaging. It shows you some of the other figures in the range and stuff. So this is an example of modern action figure packaging. But the one that the trend was spitting out was the old school 80s 90s G.I. Joe, the 3.75 inch action figure, or the original Mattel He-Man, and Master of the Universe, that kind of packaging. And it was absolutely shit. An actual action figure, it has points of articulation that you can see on the action figure. The old G.I. Joe ones, they have little screws everywhere and everything, that shows you, it gives you an additional context for, okay, so there's a screw right here, there's a screw somewhere here, here, in the legs. There are O-rings that connect the legs to the hips and everything. The trend was just basically a full image, just of you in whatever kind of, costume that you typed into the system. It was just that with like 2 or 3 pieces of accessories. It was the most boring ass bullshit that I have ever seen. I'm like, people actually like this? And, this was the Studio Ghibli trend and the action figure trend. It was being used so much that Sam Altman at OpenAI said that our servers are melting, which, yeah, good for you, man. I hope more of your servers melt. I hope you had to spend like another $200-300 billion on this bullshit. But then again, what are we doing? There were people who were using these systems, and I was like, why are you doing it? You are a creative person. You have fought, you've defended the artist's right to use their own work in their own way and not feed it into a generative AI. But just because you said I did this on my own machine, it's okay, or I was just, it's a cute trend, whatever. No, we cannot normalize generative AI. Like I said, it's making people unemployed. It's making people poorer. It is taking work away from real artists. It is not giving you any opportunities of self-enrichment, and it is destroying the world. Plus, it's making you lazy. What, you think just because you typed a prompt in a generative AI system, that makes you an artist? You're consuming the lies sold by these companies that say this democratizes art. It doesn't democratize anything. If you want, you can go right now, pick up a pencil, and you can draw. You can pick up a pen. You can take a notebook. Go sit at your desk. You can start writing poetry. You can open your laptop, or you can go to a computer center. Go there, open up Word, start typing your television script. You can do that. You can do endless amounts of research for that. You will learn something. With generative AI, you don't learn anything. You don't learn anything. That is the point. We improve ourselves by learning. We fail, we make the effort again, and hopefully we improve. We learn something, right? That is the power of creativity. It forces you to learn. It forces you to learn about yourself. It forces you to learn about your characters, your world, the circumstances. You use your own experiences. Every person has a different experience. Every single person in the world, no matter what their age, nationality, their race, whatever, doesn't matter. Every person has a different experience. It has a unique experience that affects their art differently. That's what makes us unique. Generative AI is just uniformity. It's just spitting out the exact same thing within the same parameters. Doesn't matter what those parameters are, but within the same set of parameters, it'll always give you that same thing because it is limited. It cannot create something new out of that mesh. It's just a mesh. Creativity is when you say, when you do 1 + 1 and you get 3. That's creativity. You've taken two different things, the act of creation, your own experience, and you created something that is more than those two things. Generative AI is just 1 + 1 = 2. That's what it is. And that's where I want to end this video on. I've rambled on long enough. Yes, I know this was a bit of a long video, and on the Messy Life with Abhinav, people expecting me to do short videos. Like I showed my last video to my dad, and he was like, "Yeah, make it shorter." I'm like, "Okay, I'll try." But second video on the channel now, this one, and these things are important to watch, to hear, to listen, and you cannot do those in sound bites. But just remember this: generative AI, as it is given to us right now, it is not what we need. It is also not what we want. It is destroying the world. It is making people poorer, and we don't learn anything. We become lazy. Anyone who uses generative AI for a creative endeavor, no matter how minuscule or how large, you're not an artist. You're just a thief. Those companies are thieves, and you are their accomplice. Generative AI companies all over the world, they're being sued. There are huge lawsuits going on in the US right now on behalf of artists. All the authors who have the thousands, tens of thousands of authors in North America and Europe and everywhere else who had their work stolen by Meta. Meta, they said that their system pirated all that material and fed it into the system. So that's just a compounding of crimes, and this is where we are. This is the unfortunate reality. Like I said, I've said so many times in this video, AI should help us be better human beings. It should help us be better creatively, and it should handle the mundane tasks so we can focus on all of that. So we can focus on self-enrichment. We can make life better for ourselves, our friends, our families, and just the world itself. Star Trek, the Federation, that is the goal. The goal is not some dystopic future where we do all the work while AI does all the creative stuff. Who wants that? And just because you participate in these, stupid ass social media trends, doesn't make you smart, doesn't make you hip. It just means you don't give a fuck. It says you don't care about the world. It says you don't care about the people in your lives. And it says you don't care about the people who make your art. What happens? Generative AI companies, they're already running out of data sets. They are running out of material to consume. What happens when they reach that absolute, they reach the absolute floor and ceiling of those limits? Where is new art going to come from if all the artists have been just driven away and, there's no new art being created, and the generative AI companies, they just, like the Ouroboros, the snake that eats its own tail, just consumes itself over and over and over and over, just going round and round, nothing new is being created. We will die as a species at that point. That is something to keep in mind. So hopefully I've given you some knowledge here. I know I'm not an expert, but this is my understanding of the system, my understanding of the situation that we're in, and I hope I gave you some important knowledge and information that you can, process and try to understand what is going on. Generative AI is a false prophet. It's a Faustian bargain. Avoid it. Cheers. Bye.